I want to talk today about emotions, good and bad. So it's how we often react to particularly the Word of God, love or hate or joy or sadness or fear or faith, laughter or crying or weeping, elation or deflation. You can either believe or you can mock. All different ways we react to God and to His Word. Just here, of course, a very well-known passage in Ecclesiastes where it says, to everything there is a season, a time to every purpose under heaven, a time to be born and a time to die. And then later it says a time to weep and a time to laugh, a time to mourn or a time to dance. And then down in verse 8, a time to love and a time to hate. So there are different ways we can react, and maybe picking on the right one at the right time. When God came to Abraham and said at the age of 100 he was going to be a father, then Abraham fell on his face and laughed and said in his heart, shall a child be born unto him that is 100 years old, and shall Sarah that is 90 years old bear? Now he didn't get told off for laughing there, but we see a little bit later Sarah laughed, but she obviously laughed in doubt, whereas I would say Abraham laughed in rejoicing. And it just says later on there, Abraham and Sarah were old and well stricken in age, and it came to be that Sarah after the manner of ceased to be with Sarah after the manner of women. Therefore Sarah laughed within herself, saying, after I am waxed old, shall I have pleasure, my Lord being old also? And the Lord said unto Abraham, wherefore did Sarah laugh, saying, shall I of surety have bare a child which am old? Is anything too hard for the Lord? At the time appointed I will return unto thee according to the time of life, and Sarah shall have a son. Then Sarah denied, saying, I laughed not, for she was afraid. And he said, the angel of the Lord, nay, but thou didst laugh. So different ways we can react, and God's very interested in the faith factor and in whether we laugh and rejoice in the Lord or we doubt something. There's an amazing passage in Matthew chapter 5 where he talks about us reacting totally different to maybe what we would normally react. I'm going to start reading in verse 38. Ye have heard that it has been said, an eye for an eye and a tooth for a tooth. But I say unto you that ye resist not evil, but whosoever shall smite thee on the right cheek, turn to him the other also. And if any man will sue thee at the law, and take away thy coat, let him have thy cloak also. And whosoever shall compel thee to go a mile, go with him twain. Give to him that asketh thee, and from him that would borrow of thee, turn not thou away. Ye have heard that it has been said, thou shalt love thy neighbour and hate thy enemy. But I say unto you, I love your enemies, and bless them that curse you. Be good to them that hate you, and pray for them which despitefully use you and persecute you, that you may be the children of your Father which is in heaven. For he maketh his sun to shine on the evil and on the good, and sendeth rain on the just and on the unjust. For if you love them which love you, what reward have you? Do not even the publicans the same? If you salute your brethren only, what do you more than others? Do not even the publicans do so? Be ye therefore perfect, even as your Father which is in heaven is perfect. So God talked about us reacting and looking at things in a totally different light way to what how you would normally react. Later on, of course, when was dealing with the story of Lazarus who died, and then when Mary was come to where Jesus was and saw him, she fell down at his feet, saying unto him, Lord, if thou hadst been here, my brother had not died. Now we know that Martha had already gone through that with Jesus and talked about the resurrection and so on. But here we're dealing with Mary's turned up a little bit later, talking about their brother Lazarus. When Jesus therefore saw her weeping, and the Jews also weeping which came with her, he groaned in the spirit and was troubled. Now, it goes on to say that they interpreted him being upset, that he loved Lazarus. He knew what he was going to do with Lazarus. He was not troubled at all about Lazarus. He was troubled about their lack of faith. And he said, where have you laid him? They said unto him, Lord, come and see. And then there may be very famous, shortest verse in the whole Bible, Jesus wept. And then in verse 36 it says, then said the Jews, behold how he loved him. But Jesus was not weeping about that. He was weeping about their lack of faith, and that they should have realized that he was, even though he was 4 days late, as we know, he was never late. Just another point later on in the book of James, where it says, draw nigh to God, and he will draw nigh to you. Cleanse your hands, ye sinners, and purify your hearts, ye double-minded. Be afflicted and mourn and weep. Let your laughter be turned to mourning, and your joy to heaviness. Humble yourselves in the sight of the Lord, and he shall lift you up. Sorrow is better than laughter, for by the sadness of the countenance the heart is made better. That's in the book of Ecclesiastes. So you'd think, well, that's not really what I want to be a Christian for. I don't want to be sad. But there are times when we need to recognize whatever we're going through is a time maybe not to rejoice, and to have humility and ask for forgiveness and so on from the Lord. So Jesus, of course, had said to Peter, when Peter boasted that he would never deny the Lord, and he said, Peter, remember the word. And Peter remembered the word of Jesus, which said unto him, before the crow thou shalt deny me, before the cock crow thou shalt deny me thrice. And he went out and he wept bitterly. So we've got quite a bit of emotion here, people weeping for different reasons. Now he is maybe in the sense of a time for sorrow, not a time for normal sort of rejoicing. So, and there is this thing called mocking. When it says in Matthew 27, then the soldiers of the governor took Jesus into the common hall, and gathered unto him the whole band of soldiers, and they stripped him and put on him a scarlet robe. And when they had plaited a crown of thorns, they put it on his head, and a reed in his hand. And they bowed the knee before him and mocked him, saying, Hail, King of the Jews! And they spit upon him and took the reed and smote him on the head, which would have cut his head. And after they had mocked him, they took the robe off from him and put his own robe on it, and led him away to be crucified, to crucify him. So different people approach the Lord in different ways. We certainly don't want to approach the Lord this way. Okay, reading a little bit later. The 2 men on the road to Emmaus, 2 of the Lord's disciples. When he walked alongside them, he kept prodding them with, what's wrong, guys? He said unto them, what manner of communications are these that ye have one to another, and ye, as you walk, and are sad? And then they said, well, haven't you heard, or weren't you there? Didn't you know what happened? And then he kept saying, no, you tell me what happened. And they talked about him as though he was in the past tense. And but anyhow, after a while, we know that the Lord said these things should happen. And we'll read that in verse 31. And their eyes were open, and they knew him, and he vanished out of their sight. And they said one to another, did not our heart burn within us when he talked with us by the way, while he opened to us the scriptures? So they had a whole different sensation there. They were gloomy. They put Jesus, he was a prophet. We hoped that he would restore Israel. Well, of course, they had that all wrong. Why they ever thought after 3.5 years that the main reason Jesus was there to bring back the glory of Israel and to kick out the Romans, but they kept doing. We see it in Acts chapter 1 also, where they asked, are you going to restore Israel? And I thought, well, that's in the Lord's hand. Right now you're missing the point. You're here to be a witness of the truth. So now the Lord in John chapter 16 was talking about relieving them and going back to heaven, and they didn't understand that, and they were upset by it. And he said in John 16, and ye now therefore have sorrow, but I will see you again, and your heart shall rejoice, and your joy no man taketh from you. And in that day you shall ask me nothing. Verily I say unto you, whatsoever you shall ask the Father in my name, he will give it you. Hitherto ye have asked nothing in my name. Ask, and ye shall receive, that your joy may be full. So let's maybe think particularly about the emotion joy, because that's really what Christianity in the majority should be about. Now, on the day of Pentecost, Peter got up and we know gave a wonderful explanation of what was happening as they spoke in tongues. And I want to pick up a little bit of that explanation in verse 25 of Acts chapter 2. And David, speaking concerning him, I saw the Lord always before my face, for he is on my right hand that I should not be moved. Therefore did my heart rejoice, and my tongue was glad. Moreover, all my flesh also shall rest in hope, because thou wilt not leave my soul in hell, neither wilt thou suffer thy Holy One to see corruption. Thou hast made known to me the ways of life. Thou shalt make me full of joy with thy countenance. Now, David was, of course, a prophet in a sense here, and this applied to when Jesus was not left in the grave. So in Acts chapter 8, when the gospel goes out, we just see again, I'm thinking particularly about maybe the emotion joy. I'd like to finish on that thought. And in Acts chapter 8, when the church was scattered abroad, went everywhere preaching the word of the persecution of Saul, then Philip went down to the city of Samaria and preached Christ unto them. And the people with one accord gave heed unto those things which Philip spake, hearing and seeing the miracles which he did. For unclean spirits, crying with a loud voice, came out of many that were possessed with them, and many taken with palsy, and that were lame were healed. And there was great joy in that city. So times of revival are really the most exciting thing once you're in the Lord. You know, when Paul was preaching on Mars Hill, a very famous little sermon he gave there, he finished off by saying, because he hath appointed a day in which he will judge the world in righteousness by the man whom he hath ordained. Wherefore he hath given assurance unto all men in that he hath raised him from the dead. And when they heard of the resurrection of the dead, some mocked. Others said, we will hear thee again of this matter. So Paul departed from among them, howbeit certain clave unto him would let him go, and believed. Among them was Dionysius, I can't really say his name, a guy there, Dionysius, and an Areopagite, and a woman called Damaris, and others with him. So how do we react to when you hear the truth? Some mock, some scoff at it, others say, we want to hear more about this. I was just thinking maybe finishing on the mess that the world is in right now, the Russia-Ukraine situation, the Jews and the Palestinians, and maybe even politics in America, the Democrats and the Republicans. Hate is at a new level, and it's sort of an amazing part of our world right now. And in Matthew 24, well-known passage, you shall hear of wars and rumours of wars. See that you be not troubled, for all these things must come to pass, but the end is not yet. For nation shall rise against nation, and kingdom against kingdom. There shall be famines and pestilences and earthquakes in different places. All these are the beginning of sorrows. And then shall they deliver you up to be afflicted, and shall kill you, and ye shall be hated of all nations for my name's sake. Then shall many be offended, and shall betray one another, and shall hate one another. Well, we don't want that. We want the joy of the Lord. You know, just finishing with some thoughts, Jesus said that for those that have the talents and walk and live with the Lord, he promised them that they would be rewarded with, well done, thou good and faithful servant. Thou hast been faithful over a few things, and I'll make thee ruler over many things. Enter thou into the joy of the Lord. You know, our walk in the Lord should be mainly joyful. If you're at a fellowship and you're oppressed and there's no joy there, then there's something wrong. You know, Paul said in Acts 20, when people were saying, if you go back to Jerusalem, you're getting in trouble, he said, I don't care. All I want to do is I want to finish my course with joy. That's what it's all about. So let us make sure that we finish our course whenever that time comes, or when the Lord comes, with joy. Thank you.